Now that the dust has cleared in the wake of Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, it's time to address the burning question. Why oh why are the Pokémon video games, the franchise's bread and butter, in such a weird place? And more to the point, how do we fix them and make sure that Pokémon becomes a series that reflects its massive market share? After all, even the most devoted fans know they could do so much better. I'm Cy for WhatCulture.com and these are 8 ways Nintendo can save Pokémon. Number 8. Performance needs to be better. Let's get this one out of the way early. When Pokémon Scarlet and Violet released, the games were the talk of the internet purely because of how they were running. Videos filled social media on that first week of glitches and oddities with NPCs casually walking through battle scenes or Pokémon stuck in the walls. But more than that, people were perturbed at the game running at frame rates that can only be described charitably as chugging. The series appeals to more than just gamers, as evidenced by Generation 9 entering the realm of the top 15 best-selling Switch games ever on its opening weekend alone. But the thing is, it's not about sales, it's about public perception. Conversations about Pokémon games in the 2020 centre on Game Freak's lack of polish and QA more than anything else, which is why the positive reaction to the game's content was lost under a sea of "yep, that's Game Freak for you" as the glitches rolled in. The next major games in the series cannot afford to go through the same thing again, or they'll just exacerbate the reputation of Pokémon being a franchise that not only cannot stay relevant, but is alienating its core consumer base of gamers who more often than not care about a smooth experience. It would be silly to expect remarkable hyper-realistic 8K visuals, but something at least reliable and consistent would be a big step up from Scarlet and Violet's most egregious misstep. Number 7. Voice acting. As great as Scarlet and Violet's story was, and we will get to that, it was missing something. The climactic scenes of the game would have been far more impactful if you could hear the emotions of the characters bellowing out through their words. Voice acting could be a contentious point in a way, as the franchise has never done it in a mainline game before, and more than that, it presents some challenges. In the same way that the Final Fantasy games used to let you name your entire party, this ended with Final Fantasy X when voice acting came in and needed to rely on a stricter script. That being said, it has been done. Big RPGs like Persona 5 and Dragon Quest XI have gotten around this issue by giving your character a title alongside your chosen name. Pokémon could easily go the same route by making you the Professor's Apprentice or the Pokémon Whisperer, or quite simply have everyone call you Trainer. Naturally, this presents localization difficulties, but considering the amount of Poké dollars that the franchise must make annually, money should be no issue. It sadly stinks of laziness. Advertising the next titles with voice acting would be a huge step, one that should have happened about 10 years ago, but all the same, it's about damn time. Number 6. Full freedom of exploration. Pokémon Sword and Shield, the series' first foray onto the Nintendo Switch in 2019, were a strange dichotomy. They dared to dip their toes into larger open areas with roaming Pokémon, but outside of that, the game had almost certainly never been so linear or boring. The best thing Scarlet and Violet did after the story's setup was just let players go off and craft their own journeys. There was no set path, and we were given a map of the game's 18 most important objectives, gym badges, Titan Pokémon, and showdowns with the game's villains, and simply sent off to fulfill them as we came across them. It was an intoxicating preposition, and largely it worked, but it also felt like they could have done even more with it. Technically, you can face these challenges as you find them, but they all have a set difficulty level. That is to say, there is still a correct order. Sure, if you're a confident and long-serving Pokémon master, you can tackle harder objectives first, but you'll wind up creating a game where the difficulty descends as you are forced to knock off the easy challenges later. Quite simply, Pokémon's next open world needs a level scaler. If you use the franchise's long-standing gym badges as an example, perhaps every gym leader has a different number of Pokémon that changes and levels depending on how many badges you already have. That way, whatever order you challenge them, there's never a wrong way to do it. Scarlet and Violet's world was great, but its freedoms need to be built on next time around. Number 5. Commit to cooperative play. Perhaps the most universally held dream for a Pokémon game, especially amongst the most long-standing of fans, is some kind of MMORPG. Part of that is the appeal of a large interconnected world, but the other is the ability to play alongside friends. Scarlet and Violet peeked inside the box of possibilities with this one, and it was a heavily advertised feature that you could explore the world with up to 3 friends. And for the most part, it's awesome. You can explore the world together, take selfies, battle, and watch each other battle other trainers. It's nearly flawless. However, the caveat is that you can't actually go through the story together. You can both be in the same world, but you're resigned to doing the major parts of it alone. Because of the way the game's plot centres around a certain group of characters, and each player's own motorbike dragon, you can't contribute to your friend's story. Which feels like a missed opportunity and a tease. It wouldn't be all that hard to just fully commit to games that are utterly complete completely cooperative. Previous titles have had sections where trainers fight in double battles, so why not bake that concept into the game if you're playing alongside a buddy? From the lowliest trainer to the champion of the Elite Four, it would certainly make for a different and altogether more memorable experience. Number 4. Continue with great storytelling. Many Pokémon fans have heralded Black and White, released for the DS in 2010, as some of the best games in the series, especially from a storytelling perspective. It dared to ask big, ever-present questions about the morality of trapping animals in small spheres and forcing them to fight each other. Since then, however, the series has sort of shied away from truly deep stories. Scarlet and Violet fixed this a fair bit with a core set of interesting characters, each with their own goals. Arven, his personal tale of loss and gut-punching relationship with his unwell pet doggo, knew exactly how to tug on our heartstrings. It felt refreshing, particularly after Sword and Shield was almost entirely devoid of any plot. Without spoiling it, the game has a wonderful final act that makes the last decade of Pokémon seem limp and sterile by comparison. Essentially, we need more of this. Pokémon is so established now that you can't simply have, I'm going to use this new legendary to recreate the Earth as your story again. The series always does better when we can interact with semi-realistic characters with empathetic goals that end in lessons or moral quandaries. Real stories that just so happen to take place in a world full of dragons, dinosaurs, and sentient magnets. Number 3. Take inspiration from Legends Arceus. 2022 was a wild year for the Pokémon franchise as it was bookended with pretty major releases. In January, we had a real diversion from the norm with Legends Arceus, which took us into Pokémon's past and made some pretty broad changes to what we'd come to know over the last 25 years. As with most major departures for a series, it wasn't perfect, but it did do a few things that were celebrated by almost everyone. The open world, most importantly, was fluid and always moving. Every time you entered battle, it was a joy to move in and out of combat, and considering the game was asking you to catch as many Pokémon as possible, often of the same species, it was important for this aspect to be speedy. Unfortunately, Scarlet and Violet felt like a step back through almost no fault of their own. Since Legends and Generation 9 were being developed at the same time, aspects from one didn't necessarily cross over into the other. As such, these games felt slower and more outdated by comparison, and getting into unexpected battles was no longer a pleasant surprise, but could become a repeating frustration. It's a simple thing, but it makes so much of a difference. Generation 10 doesn't necessarily need Legends' ability to catch Pokémon from a standing position, but it needs to be smooth and keep players in control. Number 2. Bring back Mega Evolutions. Obviously, the real dream Pokémon game is one that includes every single species up to this point. Since Gold and Silver, there have been jokes about one day there will be over 1,000 Pokémon, and now we are genuinely at that point. Doing such a thing is a monumental task, and because the last few games have excluded a national dex, it's been a balancing act to find your favourites across different titles. However, it also feels like some Pokémon, or more specifically some forms, are in danger of being lost forever. Mega Evolutions were a gimmick of Generation 6 that allowed certain mons to evolve yet again into even more powerful and wilder designs. They were pretty popular since it was a way to freshen up established evolutionary lines, and became a stable part of the series between 2013 and 2018 before they suddenly got dropped. In their place, Sword and Shield had Pokémon grow in size, and Scarlet and Violet had them crystallize to change type. Fun in their own way, sure, but it has left 48 unique Pokémon forms just lost in limbo. Introducing competitive changing mechanics and evolutions and then abandoning them just feels short-sighted. New Mega Evolutions wouldn't go amiss, but most importantly, we just need access to the ones that already exist, lest they become rarer than most legendaries by pure happenstance. And number 1, end the 3-year cycle. The 3-year cycle has become the term that demonizes Game Freak the most. It refers to the fact that, since Sun and Moon, we get a new Pokémon generation every 3 years. Obviously, the key factor behind this is the great and true motivator for all businesses, money. And technically, we could all have this cake / curry / sandwich / poffin and eat it too. Pokémon fans waited 22 years for Safari and Photographer Sim Snap to get a sequel, and it was dropped randomly at the end of April 2021. This was within the same financial year as Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, as well as Legends Arceus. What a strange and potentially wasteful decision. Pokémon has had more spin-offs than hot dinners at this point, and it's an ever-growing franchise in its own right that Game Freak and Nintendo need to plan better and take more advantage of. New Pokémon Snap could have been bigger, marketed better, and been treated as a tentpole title, and future installments in Mystery Dungeon, perhaps a Pokken tournament sequel, and who knows what else should be the same. And why? Because because that way the cycle of a new generation every 3 years comes to an end. AAA games simply need more time. Nintendo gives major Zelda releases a birth of 6 years, so why does Pokémon only apparently need half the time? Put B and C teams on stopgap titles so that Generation 10 arrives in 2026 at earliest and complete, rather than 2025 and a broken mess. And that's the list. Let us know what you thought of this video down in the comments below. What's the one most important thing that you think Game Freak and Nintendo need to do so that Generation 10 is a success? And if you'd like more Pokemon and Nintendo focused content, make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, comment so I can wag my fingers and say, see, I told you so. Regardless, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. I've been Cy for WhatCulture, and have a good week.